Thank you all so much for being here in this beautiful setting in Paris. I also just want to really thank our partners, AWS and Exiger, for really making tonight's conversation possible surrounding the air show. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Shannon Judd, Director of Global Defense Partners at AWS, and Derek Lemke, Senior Vice President of Supply Chain Transformation at Exiger. Hi, guys. Welcome. Thank you. All right. So there's so much that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks to get ready for tonight. And we really hope that this conversation will bring all of those great insights to light. And I want to first start with the current landscape that you're hearing from your clients and your partners. The beauty of this conversation with both of you here on stage is that we get to have this wide angle view of the entire defense supply chain landscape. And that's because of your major digital infrastructure. So what are these pain points? What are the priorities, Shannon?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me and hosting. Really, from industry's perspective, we are hearing a lot from the defense companies as well as aerospace companies that fundamentally the way they think about supply chain from a modernization standpoint, and honestly the way they think about it from a profitability standpoint is dramatically changing. So you think about things like resiliency and vulnerabilities, looking at how do you not rely on a single source or limited sources with some of the most critical components of your platforms. Number two really is around predictability and not the traditional way of looking at historical forecasts as it relates to supply chain, but how can you leverage new technologies, advanced technologies like AI, generative AI, IoT and machine learning to build foundational models that are going to search out broader similar issues to predict and prevent, future shortages or future problems. The third, what we'll talk about in a little bit, is a different lens on true collaboration in the industry that we're seeing fundamental changes on. And really to sum it up, the way to think about it is, don't look at how to solve supply chain again as the normal, how do I detect outages or how do I find other parts? Yes, that's important. But it's really building, again, fundamental models to predict and, again, look at supply chain as a strategic asset.
Derek.
Yeah, great point. And thanks for having me as well. I'd like to sum it up and say it's a little bit of everything, everywhere, all at once. Sometimes that's how it feels. And I think that just comes back to the nature of supply chains. You look at some of the large defense primes, who we definitely deal with. We look at the governments that are building these supply chains. 90% of the world and the systems that are supporting these weapon systems, these airplanes, are outsourced. So Shannon talks about critical dependencies and choke points. We see that day in, day out. Could be a single source for a casting supplier that has to go on a gearbox in the F-35. It could be a single fastener that was sole sourced to a supplier that was recently hit by a fire. Supply chains are open for disruption at any and all tiers. And so it's getting visibility to that deep level within your supply chain. And not only that deep level visibility at the entities, but what are the products and what are the materials that really matter across the defense industrial base. Pretty particular and important there is critical minerals and rare earths. We've seen recently China's export restricted up to 13 critical minerals and rare earths that are critical, absolutely critical for production capacity and supporting our defense industrial base. So you're getting down to the hole in the ground. How are we going to get to the hole in the ground across multi-tiers of supply at that level of detail to understand what is our risk, what is our dependency? So that's where we're helping customers today, helping them get to that level of visibility, but also work through the various tiers of supply so that they have data that they can act on.
Well, there's a powerful tool out now that I think helps you to do all of the things that you both just talked about: visibility, risk mitigation, diversifying. I'm talking, of course, about generative AI and the current role that it currently plays. So talk more about some of the specifics of how right now generative AI is playing a role in supply chains within the defense industry and operations, but then also how you see it evolving as the technology advances. Derek?
First and foremost, it's allowing us to move at a greater speed than previously we've been able to move. Second, and what I feel coming out of a large aerospace defense company, it's allowing us to unite teams, to unite people around the same common data fabric that exists across their supply chain. We look at a part that's getting engineered, for example, right? We're always in supply chain, we're chasing parts, we're chasing that problem. But what if we went direct to the engineer and said, hey, you're designing a product that has antimony in it. You can't get this material out of China right now. So maybe we look at an alternative option here. So for us, it's about united stakeholders and getting folks across all the supply chain, from revenue down to folks in the field, about those problems that exist and making sure that those clear signals are going to the right folks.
Yeah, and just a great point, and just to build upon that, and I stated it in my first question to you, is that fundamentally, the defense industrial base partners and many, in general, aerospace partners, they're facing the same challenges. So the fact of integrating generative AI is going to be able to have a common sharing, securely, of course, about problems that have existed. So it's able to, again, predict and learn constantly. And to be able to react faster. The other piece is, it's not just about the supply chain component of parts. It is critical, as you said, that you have the right part in the right place. And also, it's about sustainment as well and maintenance. So think about today how MRO is so siloed, which prevents a lot of, obviously, speed to market. It prevents innovation faster in platforms where generative AI breaks down those silos. Additionally, let's even take it upstream a little bit, integrating AI and generative AI into model-based engineering and simulation. Think about the amount of time for those engineers, clearly, that can be saved in terms of finding things early on in production, early on in design. So it's the entire ecosystem, again, from starting with model-based engineering down to the manufacturing floor, integrating IoT, into efficiencies in manufacturing, being able to produce parts perhaps in other manufacturing across the globe that you didn't in previous examples. And I'll leave my last comment with, in order to do that faster, we still have, especially, as you mentioned, you came from the DIB, still a lot of legacy three-tier architecture that is still being utilized. And as I mentioned earlier, cloud is really the enabler to help in that transformation. And so great partnerships, and again, we're seeing the landscape change where you have established partners working with, you had Andrew on stage earlier, and other really startup type of innovative, agile technology that are going to help advance that. So there's a lot of great things generative AI can do, but we have to break down those silos and infrastructure.
I mean, the theme of everything, everywhere, all at once, I mean, generative AI is going to be able to be everywhere all at once as well. So this is a common thing I'm hearing from both of you. And on the point of collaborative partnerships, you are both here together making this night possible because, you know, this also represents what you were just talking about, Shannon, which is that partnerships are important right now. And the kind of partnership that AWS and Exiger that you have is really, I think, representative of something bigger that's going on and what is needed right now, I think, the defense sector. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, partnership is definitely key. I think of this theme of supply chain risk management, this analogous theme, like it means so many things. And it really is a new term that's come on the street within the last 5 years, especially post-COVID. But really what it represents is all the stakeholders across the organization recognizing that supply chain is critical. It's critical to the warfighter, it's critical to revenue, it's critical for sustainment, and partnership is key to build. And so what do you need? You need a lot of compute power. The tools that we're building today, we work with AWS. We've been able to get our defense customers into the FedRAMP environment. We're dealing with a lot of data that has to be securely transferred. And that's enabled us to unlock a really great things. Not only results for our clients and our customers, but you know, being out there to secure the next win. Recently, we were awarded highest award, ranked awardee on the Scripps BPA contract with the DoD, and that is something that we weren't able to previously unlock without partners like AWS.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing a trend, and it's not just traditional partnerships around the globe where we're working together, let's say, to serve our end customers. It's really about prior to that. You're seeing a fundamental shift in as a partner, industry working with great partners and sometimes multiple partners, let's make the investment up front versus waiting for solicitations to come out. So that is a shift that AWS with many of our partners are doing. Let's go build a capability and a solution working backwards from our joint end customers' real problems. Because it's not just about delivering compute, storage, infrastructure. It's about delivering real business outcomes and solving very global challenging problems. So it's a great partnership that we've done with you to do that, and it's being amplified across the board. And again, I can't emphasize enough the ability to bring, again, traditional, well-established global partners in with the very startup innovative technologies is really going to help us excel.
It also sounds like a huge competitive edge in all aspects. And we began this conversation with a question about what you're hearing clients and partners talk to you about their concerns today. I want to end the conversation with a forward-looking one, especially looking ahead to this very packed week and also really to the next year or two. What signals are you both watching very closely? What themes, and perhaps different themes than the ones that we discussed earlier, do you expect to really dominate conversations here, off stage, and in other rooms for years to come?
Yeah, I'll start with a big one is all around data sovereignty. Clearly, as we look across our global customers, it's essential and critical for them to have the data where they need it, and certainly at the same time, though, be able to have an environment to collaborate and share, but in addition, have that ability to have clear emphasis on data sovereignty. So, at AWS, we've listened very, very clearly to our customers, and we announced recently at the end of this year that we will have a AWS European sovereign cloud that will have a separate legal distinction. So that is a huge first step in helping our global customers, but at the same time being able to provide both US-based and European-based defense contractors the ability to operate with their tools and resources in country and having that ability to have sovereign data. So that is a huge thing we are watching and very, very closely and continuing to prioritize. The other piece is really as you think about how important it is to focus on geography. And what I mean by that, and I know I welcome your thoughts on this too, is that as we think about assets and really leaning in on edge and tactical AI, understanding that there are going to be certain systems that won't survive in theater. So as you stand back and say, how do I approach, let's say, an Indo-PACOM region that's very aquatic and very mass? How do we think about technology to deploy at the edge when, again, we will have systems that won't survive? And again, tactical AI will be a key component of that versus other areas where it may be more terrestrial and more localized, right? It's going to be a very different approach of ensuring data at the edge. So those are, I'd say, two pretty large ones that we're hearing. There's the obvious ones with how satellite technology will continue to be emphasized and important in having connectivity to a global resiliency backbone and a key player there. But there's many, but I would say those are the top three that we're hearing and focused on.
Yeah, those are really great points. You talked about the data sovereignty a little bit, but that is a huge lot for our client and our customers, and especially, I think, on theme of what we're hearing this week in regards to what is Europe doing to secure their future for the defense space, and not just doing that in a silo, but doing it with international partners. On the territorial piece, I mean, on the edge, I mean, we see the same things with supply chains on the edge. A supply chain that needs to support within Indo-PACOM looks extremely different than it does, let's say, within Northern Europe. So mapping in and understanding where the threats exist is so important on what supports that. I think for my takeaway is, like, having gone to the air show a couple times now is hearing, like, supply chain is an issue. Supply chain is an issue. I don't want to hear the word issue anymore, because we all know it's an issue. It's what are you doing about it? What action are you taking? And what I'm looking to hear and hoping to hear is how companies, both big and small, are starting to think of the supply chain as a competitive advantage. I think we see it now with some of the smaller players versus the mighty Goliaths and the top primes at the top. It's an interesting power struggle that I'm looking forward to see play out, frankly. And it all comes back to the end of the day is how nimble is your supply chain? How flexible, how agile can you be to support, again, the warfighter on the defense side, which is one of the core reasons why we're here. So looking forward to that.
Thank you both, Exiger and AWS, Derek and Shannon, for being with us, being everywhere all at once, everything everywhere all at once, having that tool to go deeper, faster, and have more visibility. Thank you again, and I'll turn it back over to my colleague, Colin. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.